Have you ever had one client describe your experience as amazing, wonderful, but then you ask another client within the same week and they tell you something completely different? For them, it was a bit disjointed, disorganized. That's usually not a people problem, that's a systems problem. And as companies grow, what I see most of them, the first thing they are not thinking about is how this actually leads to retention leak. Because clients don't leave when one thing goes wrong, they leave when they stop knowing what to expect. That's the key. So in this video, I'm going to show you why inconsistent standards quietly destroy loyalty and why premium companies build predictability into their service becomes part of who they are. And I can tell you that after working with scaling businesses across multiple industries, generating over $40 million, I've seen this over and over and over again. Companies can deliver incredible service sometimes and still lose clients because the experience wasn't repeatable, it wasn't predictable. And that's what we are going to fix today. So if you care about quality and want to make service the differentiator in your market, then I'll urge you to stick around because I know most founders, operators, and leaders don't want average. They want excellence at every level. And the problem is excellence that isn't repeatable, that creates more problems and it becomes a risk for the customer. When a company is small, which I notice, standards live in the founder's head, or a few rockstar employees. They know every customer, they know their names, they know what they like. So there's a level of certainty to it. But as the team grows, things begin to get messy. And if your identity is not clearly defined, that creates a problem. And that's what creates the variation in the experience that you deliver. And that's where retention starts to leak. And so oftentimes the issue already exists, but because you have not clearly defined it, it's hard to pinpoint. And most leaders make the mistake and say that, oh, it's because we delegated. But delegation is not a problem. The issue is that you delegated without systems, and that's what causes the issue. And for customers, they decide where to spend their money when you are unpredictable. Clients don't leave because one thing went wrong. That's not it at all. Clients are not looking for perfection either. I think it's something that we have to clearly understand and align. Clients are looking for predictability and preparation. That is what they care about. And so if you are a premium brand, a scaling service-based business, you have to understand this clearly. Clients want to make sure that when they come to you, regardless of what is happening, regardless of what is going on, they can get the same experience. But the issue is, how do you get this to your team? How do you get your team to understand this level of mindset and have this clear identity about you? So no matter what, you can do this systemically. And the issue that this is not about magic. I mean, you can fix this. Premium brands define their service operationally, their standard. Like, it's not just said in words like we are customer centric, we care about customers, customers are number one. Like, those things doesn't mean anything. Customers want to feel that. And so how you make customers feel that is by operationalizing that. You have to clearly define what that looks like and then make it easy for your customers to know what is expected or what they can expect of you. And so I'm going to go on the iPad and I'm going to show you how to make that possible. So the reason why it's hard for most businesses to operationalize the identity is because they have SOPs and SOPs are not enough. So if you have SOPs, right? SOPs, standard operating right procedures. These are great, but a lot of the time they just sit down collecting dust. Like it's not clear enough for people. People have no idea what to look for or what that is. And so it's really, really important that when you create your SOPs, right, you have to make sure that they are actionable. That is the key. Your SOPs have to be actionable. And oftentimes they are not. We just say be customer centric, take care of the customer. Like, what does that mean? And so the first thing you have to do, even before we get to the concern of you making this actionable, is that you have to understand the encounters that you are having with your customers. Encounters that you are having with your customers. So you have to think about, okay, what stages do your customers go through in terms of at what levels are they encountering you? At what levels are they engaging with you? Like when you go to the hotel, for example, you encounter the parking lot, you encounter the security, you encounter the attendant who checks you in. Like there are so many checkpoints within that. And so this is where you do what is known as the customer journey, right? Where we use this as the encounter journey because that's what it really is, right? The encounter journey is the same as your customer journey, right? In most customer service, customer experience systems, they'll tell you this is a customer journey. And the customer journey is pretty simple. You know your customer when they come in, right? You know what they have to go through. So they are at position A and you have to get them to, let's say, position Z, whatever that looks like in your world. And these things can change depending on where you are or what makes sense in your world. And so you have to clearly know what that looks like. And so for you, maybe it might be from A to B. But the issue here, or the main thing is here, is that you have to be able to list what are the various steps that your customers are going through when engaging with you. And that's what makes up the encounter journey. And you have to clearly define that because the reason why your service and growth becomes unpredictable as you scale is that most leaders are not, or most teams are not doing this work. It's like if you put the time and energy into doing this work where you clearly knows what levels your customers are engaging you at what point, and you clearly define what your encounter journeys or your customer journeys are, it's actually easier to then go back and help your team clearly know what that should be. And so I don't know what that is in your world, but let's say you are a massage business, okay? So when someone comes in, they probably walk in the door, and the first stage, right, stage one, is probably that they meet the attendant, right, who checks them in, okay? Then you have stage two, right? These are the various levels or various encounter point, right? That they interact with your business. And so they meet with the attendant. Let's say what happens. The attendant checks them in. They wait to be called, and then they are called upon by the therapist or the right, whatever that looks like. And maybe stage three is that they are done. Okay. Uh, Once they are done, what happens? Maybe they go back to the attendant again. Okay, to then check out or reschedule or schedule for the next appointment. Stage four is probably like, okay, this is where they get all these things sorted out and then they leave. So this is more like the final goodbye. All right. So when it comes to when it comes to the encounter journey or the customer journey, right? That's easy. Oftentimes it's a big circle, right? Where each point is like considered. So for you, this could be stage one, right? Let me change the color here. This is probably stage one, and then this is probably stage two. This is stage three, and this is stage four. But if you notice, this is to help you understand that your customers are going through a journey with you. Every single time that they come and they come in contact with you, they're actually going through a journey with you. So the idea here is to ensure that at each stage, so if you took stage one, or the cycles in which they are going through, because when you look at this, it's really a cycle, right? It's just a cycle. So the cycle, it goes this way, and then another one goes this way, another one goes this way, and then another one goes this way. It's all happening all at the same time. So the idea is that, which you probably have already done that at stage one, you are creating the SOPs, right? But the issue is that most of these SOPs are not actionable. And that's the biggest thing. And so I want to urge you and encourage you to go back, because you know what stages your customers are going through, what levels, what the cycle looks like, right? You know exactly what a cycle looks like. And I want you to go back and create SOPs for each stage. Create the SOPs for each stage, but make sure that they are actionable, right? Don't just be vague and say, oh, take care of the customer. What does that look like? Like we say, if you don't define it, they will decide it. So if you don't define what great service, right, looks like, then your employees are going to decide it for you. So here's the thing. Your employees will decide what that great service looks like. But here's what happens. So your customers, your employees are just trying to fill in the gaps because you have not defined it, right? This is the thing. This is assuming you have defined it, right? You have told them exactly what great service looks like. Great service means like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that looks like in your word. For you, it could be smiling. I don't know. It could be saying thank you at the end of the transaction. It could be making sure that you use a customer's name, right, multiple times in a transaction, whatever that looks like. So you've given your people a roadmap, a guideline of what to do every single time. Now, here's what happens. If you don't define it, now you have your employees just trying to figure it out as they go. And so, like this stage is here, right? Let me change my pen. So instead of we say smile, saying thank you, using the customer name multiple times, because you have not defined it, now your team is trying to understand. So one employee smiles, one employee doesn't, oftentimes doesn't look up, right? They just looking down, right? Looking down. At this stage, they are not saying thank you. They just don't say anything. So, right? Don't say anything. At this stage, where they use a customer's name, they don't, right? Never uses it. Now, what is happening is this was one employee, right? One employee. Then you're going to have another employee, right? Second employee. At each stage, maybe they are not smiling, right? They are not. Maybe they are more enthusiastic, right? Maybe at this stage where we say thank you, maybe they say thank you, right? Here, maybe they are using a customer's name, right? Now, I'm trying to paint a picture here. So you have one customer, right? And because you have not defined what great service looks like and you've not created the systems, there's no identity about you. Because when that same customer comes, they meet this employee and they get this experience. They come in tomorrow, they meet this employee and they get this experience. And this can go on and on and on, right? Then perhaps they come back again and they meet the third employee, right? And then they also get a different experience. Now, do you see what is happening? You have one customer getting multiple experiences from your brand. And that's the problem. And that's why you have to define it. Because if you don't, then they will decide, your employees will decide what that looks like. They will try to fill in the gaps. And then in turn, your customers will decide it as well. And how do your customers decide that? They go about, they never return, right? Your customers never return. They don't refer you. They stop spending more. So they start spending less. And all these is impacting your bottom line. And this is the definition and a great start to the retention leak. because your customers cannot predict the experience they are going to get each time they come in. And that's the problem. So it's not that in this situation, right, with the different experiences, sometimes they are doing all the right things, right? Smiling, being enthusiastic, being kind, trying to anticipate the needs of your customer, trying to always be pleasant. Sometimes they are doing all the right things, but because the customer cannot predict what it's going to be depending on who they meet or depending on which location they go to, that becomes like risk to the customer. And that's why they never return. And that's why you are losing customers and you are not even realizing it, because there's no identity about you. And that's why it becomes difficult to retain client. And as a result, that impact your client retention and revenue as a result. And so the first step is to clearly define who you are when it comes to the service and the experience that you deliver, and clearly help your team like do that, like. And so that's why aligning your team is key. And so in the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how to align your team. But if there's anything that you need to ensure that you do, is to make sure the SOPs per every level stage during the interaction is clearly defined. That is critical, because that's the only way you can bring about predictability. That's what the customer is looking for, not perfection. Remember, customers don't care about perfection, they care about predictability. And the only way you can bring about predictability is by doing your homework, what I just showed you, which requires preparation. Preparation. And that is what customers care about. Customers care about preparation, because preparation leads to that predictability that they are looking for. Right? Preparation leads to predictability. The only way you prepare is by going through and looking at your encounter journey, clearly defining what great looks like, because that's what is going to bring about that predictability. But you first have to do your homework. So in the next video, I'll show you how to create this, but most importantly, how to get your team aligned on the same page. I hope you found this valuable, and I'll see you in the next video. And if you're serious about getting the help you need, if you need a help, happy to help you. I'm doing a free masterclass on the 5 service mistakes most service-based businesses make, which kill their client retention and revenue and prevent them from scaling. These are just some of the simple, low-hanging fruit that are causing that. But if you want to know all 5 and the exact system that most of my clients use to protect retention and revenue, then go ahead and sign up for the masterclass. I'll put a link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.